G'day, hi, and welcome. Alright, let's just jump into this. Alright, I got another movie bike review for you. I kind of like taking bikes that are not super popular, known, and just show you something a little different. And what we got here is from The Matrix Reloaded, 2003, 2004, whenever that movie came out. Not a bad movie. I know there's a new Matrix movie out. Haven't seen it yet, but what we're going to talk about is the Trinity bike, or aka the Ducati 996. Now, you're probably going to notice a little discrepancy in this video if you haven't already caught on to it. And there's a bit of a mystery in this Ducati 996 in the movie. So, pay very close attention to the pictures in this. And I know the movie screenshots are not the best quality photos. Unfortunately, a lot of movies, when they're made, they don't take into consideration that there's going to be fanboys on, some of the cars and stuff like that. They're getting better with it where you get a movie and then, if you buy the DVD or whatever, a lot of times it'll have like the picture show so that you can really see good details of the vehicles in the movie. Now, the Ducati 996 pretty much is a stock bike in this, I think it's an SPS model or whatever the Testeretta, if I pronounced it right. So this Ducati 996 is a bit of a mystery from this movie. Not because nobody knows what it is. It's pretty much a stock bike, except for it comes in this brilliant kind of like British racing green, even though it's a Ducati. I don't know what else you'd call it. I've always called it British racing green, and a color that looks fabulous on most bikes. And it's kind of one you have to see with your naked eyeballs to really appreciate this color. Truly, to see how like the depth of it. When British racing green is done right, it's a color to die for. It is so good. Something happened to my. Oh, there we go. Okay. So here's the thing. Okay, so we clearly see she's on a Ducati 996 with the I forget what the guy was named, what his character was, but anyway, she's trying to get him to safety, right, as she's being chased down. Now, here's the cool thing. According to Keanu Reeves, who now has the Ducati 998, the Ducati 996 she learnt on wasn't a Ducati 996. It was a Ducati 998, according to Keanu Reeves. Carrie-Anne Moss never learned how to ride a motorcycle until the Matrix movie, and she learned on a Ducati 998. Why am I saying 998 when she was riding a 996 clearly? Well, here's a little bit of a movie mystery here. The Ducati 996 was a discontinued bike at the time of the movie, I believe. And the new model, which is the 998, which is basically, let's go back to 1994, we got the first of the series of these bikes was the Ducati 916, the legendary 916. The 916 then kind of got a little bit slightly ever so refined and turned into the 996, and then the Ducati 996 got finished off the series with the Ducati 998 in the early 2000s. And then it went into a different type of super bike. Still Ducati, but they switched it around a bit. So why is there a 998 in these screenshots, and why is the Matrix Reloaded bike a 998? Well, here's the thing. The best people could figure out is that the movie was filmed with several bikes. So meaning there probably was the main bike she was on was probably the 996 that you see all the screenshots of, right? When she's weaving through the traffic like a madman, that obviously is a stunt ride, and there's a lot of CGI in there and stuff like that. But the riding itself is actually real. It's just the vehicles are green screened after, right? So because I mean, no matter how good of a stunt rider you are, to get that realistic look of zipping around the tractor trailers and stuff like head-on traffic, no stunt rider would be able to physically pull that off without dying. So the power of the bike is obviously a little bit more noticeable. It's a 135 horsepower bike, the 998, right? So and these are ungoverned bikes. These are bikes that do not have traction control, anything like that. So In other words, they go like snot, and if you really womp on them, it's going to turn into a unicycle pretty quick. So when she's actually riding, she's probably really riding most of the time on the 998. But the problem is the camera angle doesn't allow you to see that very clearly. I try to watch some of the trailers of it to see watch the chase in full, and there's nowhere where I could 100% say I see an 8 on the bike. But I guess for different, and Ducatis being as reliable or slash unreliable as they are, you never know. Maybe they had to switch the bikes up a few times, so maybe the 996 broke down early on, and just enough to get the screenshots, and then then they had to complete the rest with the 998s. So how many bikes were used? I don't know. Why would they have not just went with the 998 for the whole thing? I don't know. I guess that's the mystery of the movie. But this is a bike you can find, you can buy. I don't know how many of them they made. It does say Matrix Reloaded on the tail end of the bike. It's hard to get really, really good pictures of this bike. They are out there, but it is basically a stock 998 and 996. And only the most discerning eye can really tell the difference between the bikes, because most of the changes were internal. There were like some frame changes and stuff like that, but again, you know, like a millimeter here, a millimeter there, you're really not going to tell from the naked eye. You know, like, so you can go and look at the specs of the bike, but you know, to see the difference between the 916, the 996, and the 998. Now, the 998 is considered a holy grail bike the same way the 916 is, right? So basically, they're all really a derivative of the 916, which some people, what they have done is they've taken their 996s and, you know, had them repainted, especially got one that had, you know, fairing damage anyway, and you got to repaint it. Why not do it up as a movie bike? But other than that, like, it's a pretty flat looking bike. Like, it doesn't have the gold rims. It keeps with the theme of the movie, where it's like the whole movie's got a very dark kind of presence to it, kind of like they've got like it's kind of like you're watching the movie with sunglasses on, where everything is kind of dark, so even the daytime looks darker than normal. Like, it's not like a bright sunny day, it's just kind of like a day where you're stuck in sunglasses with a filter on. So the 996 sequence is, you know, like, is she actually on a 996? I don't know. Maybe it's a 998 with a 996 on the side. You just don't know, right? So those details we don't know for sure. All I can say, it's pretty cool that whether she learned on the 996 or the 998, hats off to her, because that would be a handful of a bike to start with. Definitely not a beginner bike, especially with that much power, that geometry. I mean, as great as Ducatis are at high speeds, apparently they're really sluggish down low, especially those bikes. They'd be quite twitchy. And these are known as extremely twitchy bikes when you get them humming. They don't like rough roads very much. The frame flexes, the single-sided swing arm flexes. You know, the bike hops around on you. It's really, but that's what people love about it. Is it's just a wild animal. Like, the bike's always trying to buck you off like a MotoGP bike. So the 996 in the movie, why they went with that, only the instructors or the writers could probably tell you why they didn't just make it all a 998 sequence. I don't know. Ducati, again, they issued, I guess, a couple of bikes. I couldn't tell you how many they made, but they did issue the bike as a collector bike, but only from the 998. They didn't do a 996 at that time. Like I say, the series production of the bike of the 996 was finished by that time. And yeah, so again, why did they go with the 996 in there? Maybe it just, they had one 996 and one 998, and they just said, okay, just for consistency, pick one and go with it in the shots, and, you know, do some of the sequence on this bike, some of the sequence on that. Who knows? But that's the most logical thing, because if you were to watch it and see 996 in one scene and then 998 in the other scene, it would stink. That people would notice that, you know, because it is, especially lovers of the bike would notice it right away. And when you find inconsistencies in films, it can kind of ruin the film on you. Like, for example, there was an Indiana Jones one where they used an Evo motor for, like, it was supposed to be like the 1940s, and it's like, here's this guy, or the 1930s, and here's this guy riding around on an Evolution. It looks like an old knucklehead, but it's an Evolution engine, and it's just like, it just stands out so much. It's just like, when you know what it is, it ruins the movie for you. You know what I mean? Like, when you see modern things with, out of place. So hats off to the writers for, keeping on top of, make sure you got the 996 in the shot and don't mix them up, because if people see 998 and then 996 then 998, they're going to say, what the hell's going on, right? But it is a cool sequence. The stunt riding in it is, like, I remember seeing the making of it. Like, again, most of the stuff is green screened, and they probably, like, most of the crazy riding is probably just done on a chassis where the bike's not even, it's probably on some sort of like a conveyor. And then the actual riding, where they're riding like, where, like I say, she's riding like a madman, where she's kind of like a bit in the open, that's probably real riding there. Where it's like, okay, she is actually speeding past, but most of the stuff is probably done at like 10, 15, 20 miles per hour. Usually, it's just the camera angle makes it look like they're going really extremely fast. So, it's like, okay, come around this car, just weave around it, make sure you don't hit the car, do it at about 10 miles an hour, but do really, really, erratic moves to make it look like you're going like a madman, right? So the sequence itself, like I say, is really cool, and it gives you lots of great shots of the bike. And yes, it is a movie bike that is obtainable. That's the cool part. And what I like about it is that, like, the Ducati 916 series, 996, 998, are awesome bikes, iconic bikes to begin with. I don't know if this sequence, what it would look like with a different type of bike. Like if they would have went with an R1, for example, which would have been, I guess, for that year, probably would have been the beginning of the second gen R1. It probably still would have been a cool sequence, even if they did the bike in the same color. But I don't think it would have had that like, there she is all decked out in, tight leather, on a really sexy bike, a sexy woman on a sexy bike, with a really awesome color, doing burnouts and stuff like that. Like, what other bike could have pulled this off aesthetically? I just can't think of a bike in that era that would have done it. A Hayabusa wouldn't have done it. You know what I mean? Like, a Hayabusa would have looked kind of bizarre, the R1 probably just wouldn't have cut it, like, aesthetically. Why? Because the exoticness of the characters, like the Trinity character herself is an exotic character, right? So you got to kind of put her on an exotic bike. Could she have pulled it off on maybe a Daytona 955i? I don't know. Like the Ducati, like I say, the Ducati bikes are, those are holy grail bikes when you look at them for their aesthetics, right? So I don't know, because I do know when The Matrix, that movie starts, the opening scene, she comes flying in on another bike, and I can't tell quite what it is, if it's a Ducati or not. Maybe that was the other bike. Maybe like, okay, the 916 was for this sequence, but the first sequence, when she comes flying in, a little bit of a spoiler alert, and she goes into the building, and everything blows up on fire, and she's beating everybody up. Maybe that's the 998. You know what I mean? So it would have been cool if they would have, got a little bit more clarification of what bike was used and what scenes were they used in, and how were they used. So, like, the filming of it would be, like, the filming of The Matrix is interesting enough. Maybe it's a bit dated. That one would be, the effects might be a bit dated for the time, but they were good for the time, or dated now, but good for the time. But it would be interesting to see how did they actually film the whole sequence, and which bike did they use where. But anyway, I thought this was a great movie bike, because it is an obtainable bike if you have the cash, but it's a stock bike with a fancy paint job, but it's a hell of a bike. So anyway, if you like this content, links are down below to help support the channel. Next step, rate, subscribe, share, comment, like, be true to yourself, be true to others. Always you do the right thing, and have yourselves a great day, eh?